Our next lightning talk speaker, who is Kenebolo Mayor Stephen. He's going to be encouraging us to not be afraid of getting involved in open source. As people involved in technology, especially as massively, wildly underrepresented people involved in technology or interested in technology, actually the impact that we can have by contributing to open source can be significant and can be huge. So Kenebolo is here to encourage us to do that and to give us hints and tips about how we can get involved in open source. Please give him a very, very warm welcome while he sets up.
Hello. So I bring you very cold greetings from Finland. I came here and I noticed that everyone was saying like, "Oh, it's cold, it's cold." I live in Finland. Come on, this is like really good weather, so you should be happy. Okay, so I'm gonna be giving the talk. You can do open source. Uh, I tried to make sure this talk was as non-technical as possible, so everyone could follow. I've given this talk a couple of times to more technical audiences, but this audience we have quite different set of people. Some people are not into tech, so I tried to make this as non-technical as possible. Okay, so hello. I'm Kenny Bolomaya Steven. I'm the front-end engineering team lead at this company called Bigcaster, which is in Finland. I'm also a developer advocate, and I'm the convener and community manager of the Coder Freak. The Coder Freak is a free weekend-intensive software engineering bootcamp where we try to get underrepresented folks in tech into tech. So basically trying to bridge the gap. I'm all pro-black, black and proud. I owe no one any apologies for that. You can find me on Twitter at ExpensiveStevie, and please don't ask me how that handle came because I can't really explain. Okay, what are we talking about? First of all, I'll talk about what open source is. I'm going to talk about why we should all contribute to open source and how easily it is to get started with open source. So, what on earth is open source? Basically, this is the dictionary definition of open source. Denoting software for which the original source code is made freely available and may be redistributed and modified. There are special caveats to this. Open source software also comes with licenses. The license just means that you can share it freely and give credit where necessary. But yeah, this is the dictionary definition of open source. Just indulge me. By a show of hands, how many people here actually write code? Ooh, okay. I didn't know that. We're so many. Nice. How many of you can say every tool you have used, you basically wrote it from scratch by yourself? Exactly. That is the reason why we should all contribute to open source. So I'm taking this code from Arietta. Why I love contributing to open source software. Working on Freenode, I don't know. How many people know Freenode here? Okay, awesome. This, by the way, is a she. Working on Freenode helped me, and many of the skills are later used for my studies in university and my actual job. I think working on open source projects helped me as much as it helps the project. Here, Henrietta is basically telling us that it doesn't really matter if you're in university. It doesn't really matter if you're shy in person. Online, no one really knows. They don't see your face, so that's totally okay. But the skills you can get from contributing to open source can actually redefine your life in the tech space. Some benefits of contributing to open source: improving existing skills. I mentioned this one first and foremost, mostly because as software engineers, you know that the more you do something, the better you get at it. The more you contribute to open source, the more you actually understand how the community works. And need I say, although I haven't put that in this slide, the more you contribute to open source, the more you can actually shape the direction in which this industry moves. It's one thing to actually say we want more black people in tech. It's another thing to actually put our mouths there. So I actually think it's important that you know that you can actually improve your skills by contributing to open source. You can meet people who are interested in similar things. I can give you an interesting story. One of my closest friends I'm not going to mention his name because he's quite shy, but one of my closest friends in the tech space, we've spoken at conferences together, is based in Germany. And how I met her was actually contributing to a project on Ember. I never knew that she liked webcomics. I never knew that she was into animations. But apparently, we had so many things in common. And now, whenever I want to write a talk proposal, I'm having a brainstorming session with her. She's always been like a very good friend lately. So you can actually meet a lot of people who have the same interest as you. Find mentors and teach others. I'm a strong advocate for this because my passion is about teaching black people in tech. Not just black people, people of color, but usually it's been more black people. I think it's quite important that it doesn't matter if you're a junior software engineer or a senior software engineer. I think it's important that you know that in the open source world, you can actually find people to mentor or people to mentor you. This is how it works, and it's quite easy. It could be as easy as reviewing code, for example. You could keep a comment and ask a question, and then someone picks up that question and explains to you, and you get the conversation going. It's that easy sometimes. So as much as you like to write code in your own shell, I think it's also important to take note of these points. Build public artifacts that can help you grow and build a reputation and career. Uh, a quick example, I've been speaking for a couple of years now. The first time I was called to speak, it was because someone actually saw that I built a network speed calculator on NPM. And the person reached out to me and said they wanted me to speak about why I built that tool. The reason I built it was because while I was working, we needed a JavaScript library to actually do exactly what it did, like with Skype and calculate network bars and all of that. We couldn't find something suitable, so it was plain JavaScript. It was simple to do. I was surprised that we didn't really have something that could serve a purpose, and that's why I built it. Someone found that on GitHub and on NPM and actually invited me to speak about that. That's how I actually got into speaking. So it creates some kind of roadmap for you. It gives you some kind of advantage in that sense. And it's like a resume builder, in my opinion, also. Lastly, learn people skills. This one is quite interesting because in open source, I'm sorry, but sometimes we're not very nice. It's true, and it's something that as open source advocates, we have to work on. Sometimes you would like to contribute to some projects, but when you go through the code reviews that you see there, you're like, maybe not. And this is okay. This is totally fine. But the reason why I encourage people to do it, despite that, is because, for example, part of the reason why today I'm a team lead, leading a front-end team, is mostly because from open source, I've actually learned how to deal with different characters. Some people are more reserved. Some people are more outspoken. In your normal work, for example, your regular 9 to 5 that you do, you might maybe work in a team that's very cohesive, and that's fine. But if you want to actually level up, sometimes it's actually good to have those other people that maybe cause distractions in the team, and learning how to manage them would actually improve your skills also. So, how to get started? My idea about this was to make sure that before the end of this conference, we actually have a few people who would make their first commits to open source. And I'm hoping that somehow we would all help me get to that point and help each other. So, who knows about CocoaPods? Okay, so I'm guessing no one from the iOS world is here. Nice. So, I've been renowned for my work on CocoaPods, but most people don't know that I actually don't do any real work on CocoaPod tool itself. My time on the project is mostly spent doing things like documentation and working on branding. And the reason why I'm pointing Orta, because if you're related to the iOS world, you will definitely know about Orta and CocoaPods. The reason why I'm pointing this is because it's quite important that people understand that you don't always have to write code to actually contribute to open source. This is the message I brought here, and this is the message I want everyone to go back home with. You don't always have to write code to contribute to open source. And I will prove that to you because some of my best open source contributions that I'm proud of have nothing to do with code. Let's take a look at this. If you look up there, this was Node.js version 11.4.0. This was the Node.js release. This is the proudest open source commit I've made in my life. I've written tons of code, but this here is the proudest one. I'll show you what's actually there. It was a line of documentation. as front-end engineering lead, I basically come from a back-end engineering background, so I'm not your CSS developer. I don't really know so much of CSS. I know standard CSS, but I don't know so much of it. Dealing with backend, I noticed that we needed to actually have a couple of headers. We needed to get a couple of headers out of the request objects. Unfortunately, Node didn't document those. The authority and scheme headers were not documented. So I had no idea how I was supposed to get this. And then I go in, I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I find an open issue. And I'm like, okay, so this is actually there. It's just not documented. All right, I'm going to write a documentation for it. And that's how I landed up in 11.4.0. And that was it. It was just documentation. It involved no code whatsoever. And believe you me, one of the shittiest parts of open source is our documentation. Sometimes you read them and you're like, what the hell? You know. Uh, Shout out to Vue.js. They have probably the best documentation in the industry right now. But when you look at some other open source projects, you look at the documentation and you're wondering. Documentations are supposed to be beginner friendly. If they're not, then you owe it to all of them to actually fix this. This one here was I think a few days ago. It was a real-time JavaScript. Basically, I was working on Prisma, and I noticed something wasn't documented that I needed to do. And basically, I made a pull request for it. And that's pretty much it. This is how easy you can get to open source. I have a lot of documentation issues. I don't have the time to show them here, but please afterwards you can meet me and I can show them to you. And you can. And for me, it's actually interesting that I'm here because one of the problems in our documentations is bad English. This is England. You speak English. Perfect. This serves everyone, right? So, but yeah, if you're willing to get in one contribution, even it's better before this, just holler at me and then we'll try to fix it. We'll try to get your first contribution merged in. You can find all this information here. I believe the slides will be up, so you can also make reference to this. And thank you. To leave, I will just leave you with a short video. I didn't make any animation. Thank you very much. I'm glad you had me.
Thank you so much, Kenny Bolo. That was a fantastic talk, and I hope people come away